Hi, my name is Matthew. This is another Visions of Divine Media video. In this video, I'm going to show you how I made a 2D character do a full 360 degree turn. So you can see I start with a sketch, that's a separate grease pencil, and I'm just showing you how some of the functionality can work with the sculpt tool. I use the sculpt tool a lot because like I have squiggly lines and I want to smooth them out, or I want to move some of the shape to make the cheek come out a little bit more. And it's amazing that you can use the sculpt tool with grease pencil, and I just loved that I had the capability to make my drawing look like I made a good drawing. So even if you're bad at drawing, you can turn a grease pencil object into a nice 2D character like this. This is Jam for the animation fish giver. It has a couple of different heads, which I'm going to explain why. You can see the different angles moving in the timeline in grease pencil object mode. You can see the different layers for the drawing there on the side panel that I scrubbed through, and that's how you basically make it. You create all these layers for drawings, and then you have separate grease pencil objects that you can move around in 3D space. Like with the eyeballs, I can move the eyes separate from the head, and it's just really cool. And there I'm moving the pupils in and out just to show you that if I have them a bit further out in the y-axis, then it's going to give that kind of cool effect. But if they're too far out, then it's going to cause like a problem with the camera movements. But so then you can see there with the layers, where I have the layer in the list will determine what it sits on top of with the object. There you can see the two heads. So with this angle head, there's drawings of the different angles, and then with the front head, I have the different mouth shapes, as you can see they're moving there, the phonemes, to make the lip syncing work. And I can only have one time offset modifier per grease pencil object. That's why I have two heads, and you'll see more when I'm rigging it later. And there you can see the arms and the legs are separate objects, or they should be, so that you know it's helpful when you're setting up for animation as well with the rigging. And you can always create one, draw one, and then duplicate it using the mirror tool as you're drawing it, and then copy it to a new grease pencil object for the opposing sides. So you can see there with the masking, you're able to keep that eye in the eye socket by using a mask. So I apply a mask to the pupil that's called eye. And there I can't move the teeth out of the head. See, I'm showing you, you could do that to keep the teeth in the mouth. You could apply a mask that's a mouth mask for the teeth, just to stop things from going crazy. Or you can, for the lips, let's say with the angle drawings that I did, I had the lips and the whole mouth set up. All those drawings were masked by the head so that they can't move outside of the head. Okay, now if you go and select your object, you can apply a time offset modifier that you saw that when you're using grease pencil, just in the add modifier list there. And when you do that, any frames that you drew in the grease pencil mode, in the draw mode, they show up there in the grease pencil timeline, and they'll be able to be edited using this time offset modifier. And you saw that I could show you how to add a driver, and we'll add a driver later to control that time offset modifier. Here, these monkeys, these Susanna monkeys are hooks. Basically, I created a hook that was a Susanna monkey. You could use any object, and I added a time offset modifier for those so that I could animate those to the position where I want, let's say, the mouth to be. And you can see when the grease pencil objects, there's the mouth selected, and the grease pencil object has this mouth vertex group, and that's the vertex group I can add to the hook modifier when I'm in object mode. There you go back to the mouth hook there, I can show you, and there's the vertex group mouth. And so that's how that's controlled. And then with lattices, it's basically the same thing. I used a whole bunch of different lattices to control the grease pencil by adding a modifier that was an armature modifier to the lattice. You can control that lattice with a bone system, with an armature. So there with the lattice selected, you can see the vertex groups that I made. So for this simple one, the collarbone, or the upper torso one, there's the arms on either side. And I have a modifier that is a lattice modifier on the grease pencil object to make it work. So you can see the different drawings I did there, switching with the time offset modifier, and then if I grab the vertexes of the lattice, I can move the body around. Now I'll just show you all the different lattices that I have. There is a lot of different lattices, but you can copy and paste. You can duplicate lattices and move them around to where you need them. In this part, I'll show you about the armatures, so you can see in edit mode how many bones I have there, and those bones over top of the character are hidden, because I'm going to use the control bones from that armature on the side. Anyway, as you can see them in blue, and there you go with the IK handle as well, and copy rotation for that front angle. And you can see I do that for the foot, and then I have those control bones over the body that I think should be there just to make it easier to animate. You saw how many bones are parented to that main bone there. Just a simple bone rigging. There's some stretch to constraints as I'm showing you here. That's going to help the hair bounce around and look more alive, look more bouncy like hair does. And that's controlled by that little bone underneath it, which has a copy to location for one of the bones to the right, so I can use that and hide that bone by the hair. And here I show you above the lip for expression lines. This is an example of how you can rig it. You have these bones in between are stretching to the bones on the side or the bone in the middle. If you want to make them stretch out there, you can see that. And then you have a little parent bone above that can be controlled by a control bone. And here you can see all the different lattices that I had to set up. You want to have lattices for every angle, and the lattice that controls that specific drawing. So here you can see the different vertex groups that I have for the front. A little more detailed with the vertex groups there, a little more geometry there, just to have it a bit smoother for the front angle, because most of my animating will be done in the front angle. So yeah, you can see the different bones and how I have them set up. You may want to parent them, or you may not want to parent them to other bones, just depending on how you want to animate it. I can make the head totally pop off the body really easy. And there you can see there how that bone controlled the turn, and that's because of the time offset modifier, which you'll see here soon. And so see how many different lattices there are, and all of those have to have vertex groups, so it's a lot of setting up. So let's just look at the 45-degree armature now to look at an angle armature. So you can see it's very simple setup for the armature. Most of those bones are green because they have copy to locations, because they're being controlled by these bones over to the right. And that's my angle armature that I can make invisible if I'm not animating in an angle, if my character's facing forward. And I can cheat a bit by having these bones that you're going to see pretty soon. So you can see there with the eyes, that's the eye bone that I can animate in an angle there. That's the angle's head that I have showing. That's why it's the angle armature, the angle control bone armature that's controlling that. And so you can see also there's IK bones, and then the copy rotation, and you got to have at least those simple things to make it easier to animate. And it's just a bit of setting up, and you can copy these armatures to have the different angles, and just by moving bones around in the edit mode. And then you can see there the control bone when my body is in an angle drawing position, because it's the lattice that's per angle that's controlling that drawing by vertex groups, as you will see. So there, the different, I'm showing the collections and how I organized everything to make it easier. You don't want that many armatures in your way, so try to keep them hidden. So this is now going to show you how I can control the head turn. So if I have the front head selected, because I did these action constraints for the front head that you're about to see, you can apply action constraints to a grease pencil object, which is amazing. So there you have the time offset modifier being driven by a driver. So on the front, that controls the phenomes, and so I have the path of that bone here in a scripted expression driver. So you can see if I turned that off or deleted that driver, I'd be able to animate it again by clicking the little arrow in that time offset modifier, but it's just easier to have a bone to be able to do it. You just slide that bone in the one axis. And so there's the action constraint that I was talking about. Okay, so I animated all of those control bones to get that action, and then I saved that action in the action editor, and I loaded it into one of these modifiers. There are these bone constraints. So you can copy those bone constraints over to each bone, and then load that animation in, and it'll remember the animation that that bone did, which is awesome. It's so cool. You could probably make a whole animation just using those. You know, if it's like saving an animation. It's like saving every little head turn that you can do. You could just have tons of those if you wanted, because they're easy enough to copy over. Just copy this constraint over to all of these bones. So I'm just showing you how I animated those. You can just see it's like basically left and right with the keyframes there. So now for the fun part, you can see I have an action in the action editor. I have an action clip that I animated, one for the front animation and one for the angle, just because you need different action editor clips for each armature, because they're separate armatures. So the angle armature controls that one. Now you can see I selected for the front armature, I selected the switch bones. I have two different switch bones, one to switch to make the front head visible or invisible, and one to switch to make the angle head visible or invisible. And that angle one is for the angle armature as well. I don't need to see it when I'm animating in the front view. And so there, it's a scripted expression, and it's a new driver by bone path. And you can see there that it's set up by the visibility. So when that bone is moved. So to get them both to work, I had to create a custom property for one, so I guess if you had multiple for whatever reason, you could have more custom properties on the other bones. So yeah, you can see I'm switching on and off the front head there. And so I obviously set keys for that at the end of when I was animating that action clip. And so you can see I'm making an example of how I did that with setting keys there with those bones selected. So now it'll switch. And you don't see that in one frame. It's really kind of cool. I was surprised. I thought I would see that glitch a little bit. So I really hope that you liked this video and that you had an easy time following it. It's a lot to cram in a short video, but you can leave a comment, or if you want me to make more videos like this to explain a little bit more, I'm glad to. And you know, just like we created this character from scratch, the Bible says in him we live and breathe and have our being, and it's talking about God. It's in him we live and breathe, and we made this character kind of come to life and live and breathe. And inside our mother's womb, he made us move around, and then as we come out, he trains our hearts and minds to move around the way that he wants us to.